Hello guys, welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled, brought to you by Betfred. I'm joined by Chris Chapman and Benjamin Bloom, because now we're going to look at the EFL Championship Manager of the Season nominees. We've got Frank Lampard from Coventry, Alex Neil from Millwall, Sergej Jakirovic from Hull, and Kim Hellberg from Middlesbrough. Obviously the narrative changing around Middlesbrough every passing week, Ben. We're going to discount kind of the playoffs from what happens when we're deciding this award. Kim Hellberg, though, made a big impact when he came in, but it's really, really tailed off. And I think that's probably why he won't win this award. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and again, it's however you perceive what the manager of the season is. But for me, and I'm sure I'll irk Norwich and Southampton fans as well here, I think the manager of the season has to do the whole season, unless someone comes in and, for example, we won't know about Southampton, takes them to second place. But I don't think it can be Hellberg, because you're coming into a team that was in second spot at that point. It's just an odd situation for a manager to come into. But, and we said it on the show earlier in the week, for me, Middlesbrough have played, for my eye, probably the best football I've seen any team. Coventry have been the best team. Maybe Millwall have been the most effective team, and Middlesbrough have been kind of Swansea, actually, strangely under Matos, I've really enjoyed watching, but that's not the conversation. So no, I would remove Hellberg from this, and do you two agree with that premise and discuss the other three?
I'd have him in fourth out of these nominees. Agreed. Just because of the drop off. If they'd have finished second, we could have a proper discussion about him, but it does feel like they've dropped off. No wins in 7, even though the XG and the dominance has been there. It does feel like it's kind of slipped away from him.
Agreed. Yeah, for me, fourth spot. Obviously, we'll talk about the ordering of the other three, but I think given the drop-off, and I think I read a stat the other day, and Middlesbrough fans I'm sure will be in the comments, that Rob Edwards had a higher points per game now than Kim Hellberg does. So
I made this point on the show a few weeks ago, that if, for example, Middlesbrough finish 1 point above Ipswich, yes, you can argue they might not have got promoted under Rob Edwards, but where was the advantage taken? It would have been under Rob, but let's not wind the Middlesbrough fans over that. But I take the point.
Yeah, and I think obviously Ipswich manager not nominated because Kieran McKenna.
I think Ipswich would have had to win the title for McKenna to be manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other three nominees. Do you want to take the lead on Alex Neil, Chris? Because obviously it's been a remarkable season. I think expectations is something we need to talk about as well when judging manager of the year. Where were pre-season expectations for Mill? Was it to be in and around the playoffs again?
Yeah, I mean, I think because the way we finished so strong last season, and to just miss out on the final day, slim chance we lost at Burnley, there was an expectation to be up there again. But I think that is because of the job Alex Neil did last year. So he's almost set his own expectations, if you like. Like I said, I would have grabbed your hands off for a playoff place at the start of the season when we caught up earlier in the week. For me, Alex Neil, and you said this word, effective. We are efficient and we're effective. We don't have a lot of possession, but we're good at what we're good at. We win the ball back in high areas. We're intense. We press well. We have the most accurate crosses into the box. That's the way we play.
Most fouls in the division.
Most fouls. But that's because we've got loads of physical players. We've won the most duels. We third for set-piece goals, but then Coventry and Southampton scored a lot more goals than us. So as a percentage of our goals, we're really up there. We're not a long ball team. We're direct, and we have a way of playing. And Alex Neil has to take huge credit. For me, if we finish third, he is rightly in this conversation, because that is an astronomical achievement for a budget and a group of players that, yes, are very talented. But if I was to put our group of players up against some of the other sides in the league that have underperformed, I think it just further emphasises what a great job he's done.
100% should be in the top 3 for this award. I think he's been fantastic. In terms of expectations, though, Ben, who had Hull City potentially in the playoffs, and Sergej Jakirovic, a manager who we didn't know anything about really, has come in and done such a brilliant job. It achieved, if they finish in the playoffs, so far above the expectations. I think I might have had him in the bottom 3.
I did, yeah. Yeah, and I would rank, if we're doing it on expectations, then Ikerovic wins it. I'm not suggesting that that's what it's got to be on delivery, hasn't it? And execution of, what you've put out across this entire season. But Ikerovic has been absolutely class. And, we had some angry Hull fans that went and beat Blackburn, didn't they? And it was like, no, you need to include us in the automatic promotion conversation. And yes, we can argue that Coventry have been a very consistent team, and then the parachute teams have not been so much this season, and Hull were, maybe Millwall also beneficiaries of that this season. But tactically, they're interesting, Hull as well, going man to man. And look at the tune he gets out of strikers. We've criticised, other managers for not doing the same, but look at Gelhardt's output, McBurney's output. One thing we do need to realise, Hull have good players. They were in dire straits. They do have good players, but
they worked the transfer embargo very well, didn't they? And gave themselves a very, very decent squad.
I know every fan of every team cries about injuries. They've not had it easy with injuries, Hull either as well.
I think Hull are potentially 10 plus places above where we expected them to be in the pre-season predictions. Millwall obviously probably 3 places above. Maybe people had them in 5th or 6th. Coventry possibly the same from my perspective. I don't think people had them winning the league, and I think that's where I would lean towards Lampard, especially given right now there's a 10-point gap between themselves and Ipswich, and over the season Coventry have just been the best team in the league, and Lampard deserves massive credit for the way he got the form going last season, kept it running into this season. We had a 11 wins out of 12 run, and then to go ahead and try and win the title this recent run, which was 8 wins out of 10. That's where I look at Lampard, and I think I would probably give him the nod, but of course I'm going to be biased, aren't I, Chris?
Yeah, you are, and that's fine. But I think I would have to agree with you again if I take my Millwall hat off, and obviously wanting Alex Neil to win the title of this award, I would have to give it to Lampard, because there's often this misconception that when you've got the best squad in the league, which Ipswich, Coventry, for me, is a bit of a coin toss. If in my
Southampton.
So I think everyone would have had Ipswich and Southampton above Coventry, especially at the start of the season.
See, I wouldn't. I've said this to you, I wouldn't.
Right now, I think if you add Onyeka to it in January, which is massive, you can have more of a conversation. But
Coventry signed a centre-back for $5 million to be a reserve and didn't have to use Rudoni until about February. They've got a really good squad.
They have, absolutely.
Coventry,
deserved. Raised the money for Harmer and Gyökeres, but below the parachute teams, brilliant squad, Coventry.
Yeah. But I guess the point I was trying to make is that it doesn't necessarily guarantee success.
No.
And a manager has to go in there and find a formula. And I think the other thing is, well, the turning point, when the pressure came and Lampard, he had that sliding doors moment, he had to beat Middlesbrough, and he did.
And he won the tactical battle hands down. And I hear a lot of nonsense talked about Frank Lampard, and maybe it's Joe Edwards as well, but that was class management.
Yeah, Joe Edwards is fantastic coach and deserves massive credit as part of that setup as well. And obviously it didn't quite work out as him as a first team manager, but for us to get him in with Lampard and the duo they've built together, this squad is playing the best football I've seen Coventry play, obviously watching them over 25 years. And that's why I think Lampard, kicking on from Robbins as well, what he laid the foundations for, has just been incredible. I think you're right, the sliding doors moment against Middlesbrough, that's what we keep looking back on the season. Should we rank these from 1 to 4? Is that how we need to finish this video? 4 to 1 rather. Ben, you started with Hellberg in 4th. How are you ranking the rest of them?
I'll go for Alex Neil in 3rd, just because Ikerovic probably had more dire straits to deal with, and Neil had got it nicely set up from last year. Both. We're talking about A's and A pluses, 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10. I would have Lampard winning it, and I've had lots of fun conversations with Norwich and Southampton fans where they say, well, look at this, over these 25 games, we're first in the league. Well, over 46, Frank Lampard's going to be first in the league without parachute payments, with some great ones, scoring a ton of goals. There's no Buendia carrying them. There's no Grealish carrying them, Pablo Hernandez or whatever. I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job. And don't forget, he's also, think of the stories, he's a world-class football player who was managing at the bottom of the Premier League, has stepped down into a Championship job. And I think when you add up all of these teams, what was Coventry's number one ceiling this year would be winning the title, and I think he's going to deliver that.
Completely agree with you, Ben. I think I probably would go for the same order as well, but with the little asterisk that Hull need to finish in the playoffs for me to put Ikerovic above Millwall. It looks like they will. They've got a 4-point gap. It's a very close for me, 2nd and 3rd. I don't want to offend you, Chris, because Neil's been fantastic. And if he went on to then win the playoffs, we could have a different conversation, unfortunately.
Well, and don't you think, Simon, to what I was saying, isn't Millwall's probably third,
Ceiling.
you would have been like, that's the best they could hope for, isn't it? Amazing.
And it's about hitting that ceiling, and that's where, beyond Coventry's fans' wildest dreams, we go on and win the league.
Well, on Good Friday, I'm like, Millwall are going to finish second here, you know, so...
You've been fighting among the big dogs, and Neil deserves the nomination. How would you rank the top 4? Do you have Neil second, maybe first? Yeah.
I would have Neil second, purely because I think, obviously, what we've heard, understand the rule book that Ikerovic has had to play with, but they picked up quite a good amount of free signings, and obviously how they achieved that we can debate. So I think for me, Alex Neil hasn't spent tons of money this season either, and every single player, and obviously I can see this watching them every single week, every single player has improved. He has improved every single player. The likes of Billy Mitchell, in my opinion, is now a top Championship central midfielder, which 18 months ago wasn't the case. So I am being objective, promise, but I would have Alex Neil as second. And if he gets us to finish third, like you said, Ben, I mean, what more could a Millwall fan really have hoped and dreamed of? Of course, the obvious answer is automatic promotion, but in context of the situation, in context of the budget, I think Alex Neil quite rightly deserves to be right at the top of this list.
Really nice, and a nice point about improving players, because I think that's a wonderful sign of a manager. You can go out and buy
Say
players.
That for Lampard as well.
And that's where you look at Jay De
Yeah.
Silva and the centre-backs, and everyone has kicked on a level, even though we had a very good manager there before. That's where Lampard's taken it to the next level, and we've all got an agreed consensus, which is nice. Frank Lampard, EFL Manager of the Season. If you haven't watched the Player of the Season video we did, where there was not a consensus, please do go back and check that out. Ben, Chris, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back on Monday for a full episode of the Sportsman Untitled. Please do like and subscribe. Get in the comments down below who you think the Championship Manager of the Season should be, and we'll see you next time.